cards and the audience. Hello. And me. Hi. And we're going back to you.
Alright. Ready?
You have 6?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're welcome to come in though.
You can
Okay.
sit in that chair.
Alright.
I'll look at him.
Everyone knows basic Civil War history, that the Union in the North and the Confederacy in the South clashed in 1861. The armies fought these big battles against each other, and eventually the South surrendered at Appomattox in 1865. But what if I told you that if it hadn't been for the actions of the United States Navy, the Confederacy might not have lost? I am a student of history, and I am in part of an organization called the USNLP, United States Navy Landing Party, which is a group of living historians who are dedicated to researching and reenacting the Union Navy during the Civil War period. And today I'm going to talk about two major contributions that were made by the United States Navy during that conflict. The first is the capture of New Orleans that took place in 1862, fairly early in the war, less than 1 year after the war began. The Union captured New Orleans. Now this is a map of the United States as it was during the Confederacy. Union is in green, Confederacy is in red. New Orleans is right here. It was the port city that led to the Gulf of Mexico. So in 1862, the Navy captured New Orleans, and this is the Mississippi River here. Okay, comes up like this, along here, goes up into here. Okay, so you can see why this may have been strategically important. This was an objective early on in the war. Lincoln knew that he had to take New Orleans to get control of the Mississippi River. But he didn't know how he was going to do it. He thought he was going to have to march down the Mississippi and take it from the land side. But then the Secretary of the Navy said, "Why don't we take it by sea?" Lincoln said, "We can take it by sea." I don't know that that was his exact words, but the reaction was similar to that. So that's exactly what they did. Admiral Farragut, who was the commander of the Gulf Squadron, sailed his ships up the Mississippi River, fought past two forts at the mouth there, and got to New Orleans and began to bombard the city, and took it with almost pretty much effortlessly. The city surrendered pretty quickly, and we got control. The Union got control of it. Now, there were a couple of major reasons why they wanted the city of New Orleans. New Orleans, of course, as I said, was the entryway to the Gulf of Mexico. If you control New Orleans, you control the entire Mississippi. The Navy was then also able to sail up the Mississippi and begin taking Confederate cities that were along the Mississippi. You can see also the Confederacy is effectively kind of split in two now if the Union controls this. That meant that cattle and horses and pigs and salt coming from this side couldn't get to that side. So this severely hampered the Confederacy. They were able also, the Union was able to move supplies up and down the Mississippi now. And it also demoralized the population of the Confederacy when they learned that New Orleans had been taken. Charles DeFore, who wrote a book called The Night the Confederacy Was Lost, quoted a Confederate newspaper when he said, New Orleans is lost, and with it the Confederacy. And that was kind of the general feeling among a lot of the population in the Confederate States in 1862 after New Orleans fell. Another important thing that a lot of people don't realize is that France and Britain were not on the side of the Union. They were neutral countries, and they were watching this very, very closely. In fact, France was on the verge of recognizing the Confederacy as a legitimate nation. Britain was preparing to mediate between the Union and the Confederacy, which would have almost certainly have resulted in the Confederacy establishing itself as a legitimate nation. However, when New Orleans fell, they began reconsidering their options. Britain still continued to provide support as far as supplies went, but they began to cool off politically and kind of distance themselves. So this severely hurt the Confederacy's chances of coming out on top. Now there was another thing that the Union did that severely hampered the Confederacy, and that was a blockade of the ports all along the coastline of the Confederate States. As I said, there was the Gulf Blockade Squadron, there was also the Atlantic Blockade Squadron, and they parked themselves outside of these ports, and they kept Confederate and neutral ships from coming or going. Neutral ships was very important because they were blockade runners. If they just closed the ports, we would not have been able to search neutral ships that were coming into the ports. But since they were blockaded, we could. And that meant that a lot of these ships were being captured. Ships that were coming from Britain, coming in from the Bahamas. They were being stopped from delivering supplies to the Confederacy. Now this wasn't very effective in the very beginning. In 1861, only about 1 in 6 actually got stopped, but by the end of the war, a full 1 in 3 or better were being stopped from entering ports. This created shortages among the Confederate States, not just in the Army, but also among the population. It also discouraged ships from trying to even make the run, and those that did make the run, some of them opted for more profitable cargo. Things like wine and brandy and furniture and corset stays, all right, things that the wealthy planters wanted, but that really didn't do anything for the population or for the Army. It also kept the Confederacy from raising valuable capital. Not only could nothing get in, but the Confederates couldn't get anything out. They couldn't export their cotton. And this severely hurt them as far as economics went. So Abe Lincoln had once commented that the Navy could be found anywhere the ground was a little damp. The Navy fought battles in the ocean, they fought it in rivers, they even fought on land alongside the Army sometimes. But the contributions of the Navy are often overlooked or undervalued in modern Civil War histories. But the capture of New Orleans and the blockade did in fact play very, very significant roles in the victory of the Union. There's no conflict in our history that arouses passions like the American Civil War. But a lot of our perceptions about the Civil War are just patently wrong or would seem foreign to people who lived at the time. And one of those was the fact that the Navy played a secondary role in the Union victory. Now it's true that the Navy alone could not have won the war, but the Army alone almost certainly would have lost it.
Good job. Okay, let me show the audience.
History.
Audience.